Hello, welcome to the Analyst Inside Cricket with me, Simon Hughes.
And I'm Simon Mann.
And I should just plug our sister site, actually, which is the Analyst Plus. And you can find that if you go to patreon.com/theanalyst25. And on there is our special series, the series looking back at the great 1974-75 Ashes, which a couple of people mentioned to me the other day they really enjoyed. You can hear the whole series, 5 episodes about that epic series when England were terrorised by Lillee and Thompson down under. And also there's some special one-off interviews on that site as well. Graham Gooch did a really good long interview a couple of weeks ago. And we've got Liam Dawson actually in our virtual club tomorrow night. And you can hear that as well if you join our Analyst Plus site at patreon.com/theanalyst25. I'll put the link at the bottom of the show notes at the end of this podcast as well. Otherwise, well, I suppose we should reflect, Simon, mainly on England's dismal performances in India, having lost the one-day series now 2-0 with one game to go, and obviously the T20s as well. We reflected on the T20s before, but now we're looking at potentially a whitewash in the one-day series as well.
Well, last week, our last episode of the Analyst Inside Cricket, we looked at the 100 sell-off, and then we looked back at the T20 series. And we'll actually have some reaction to our episode about the 100 later on today. But we also talked about England in India. And I distinctly remember you saying at the end, after England lost that T20 series, you said, well, they'll probably win the one-day series 3-0. They go on to win the Champions Trophy. And I didn't have time to say, you what? You must be mad. No, absolutely no chance. And what's happened over the last few days, absolutely no surprise. Look, since Andrew Flintoff took his shirt off in Mumbai in 2002 and waved it around, and that famous photograph of him with his shirt off in Mumbai, I think that the cricket fans will remember that. Lots of our listeners will remember that. England drew the series 3-3. So that was in, 2002. In India, England have won 5 one-day internationals. They have lost 26. And they've had one tie, that famous game in the World Cup of 2011. So what's happened in the last few days? Absolutely no surprise. And I think we've probably identified 3 reasons why it's happened again. And those are, very quickly, India are good. I mean, they're very good. They're especially at home. They're an excellent team. Since they won the World Cup, I reckon my calculations say that they've won 77 of their 108 one-day internationals at home. So that's since they won the World Cup in 2011. So India, very good. England struggle against spin in those middle overs. When they come on, they just can't move the scoreboard quickly enough. They want to, but they just can't. And when they come to bowl, they don't quite have those classy spinning options that India have to restrict India's batting. Of course, India, generally speaking, are pretty good against spin anyway. Not totally, but they're pretty good. And so what you've got is this really difficult situation where you've just got this gradual losing spiral that England just cannot get themselves out of. Is that fair enough, do you think, those 3 reasons?
I think it's very good, actually. We almost might as well end the podcast there. I think you've
Or end the series there. Don't bother playing the last one-day international.
Yeah. No, but I suppose, actually, one thing that really does emphasise your point about India and how good they are is the fact that they can play almost entirely different teams in T20 and ODIs and still look incredibly good. So only 4 players have played in both series in this current setup, in these current matches against England. Hardik Pandya, Akshar Patel, Mohammad Shami and Varun Chakravarti. And other than that, they're completely different sides, different opening pairs with the bat, different players in the middle order, Kohli coming back in, etc. And obviously quite a few different bowlers as well. Jadeja, for instance, who didn't play in the T20s and now playing in the one-day series. And he was a very important aspect, of course, in these last 2 defeats against England. And, it is spin, isn't it? That is the sort of defining difference, I suppose, between the 2 teams. England just don't produce. It's interesting that tomorrow night in our virtual club, we have Liam Dawson as our special guest. And you just feel why has he not had more chances? Because England really do lack a really good left-arm spinner in partnership with Adil Rashid, who's been consistently outstanding in all the games. And, poor Jacob Bethel had to bowl the overs in one match, and he did actually an okay job. which in a way illustrates why it's important to have a good second spinner. And then, of course, he didn't play the second match because he was injured. But you just feel England are bereft in that spin department. That second spinner could just tighten the screw and take wickets at crucial times. And which they had, when in that World Cup run, when they won in 2019, they had Moeen Ali and Rashid. And Moeen Ali, in fact, didn't play in the final, but he was a key man throughout that sort of 2-year span of matches. And just that middle order, that lower middle order, sort of 6, 7, 8, doesn't deliver often enough the runs that are needed to kind of push those totals into unassailable areas. They get the 250s and they get the 300s, but it's just not enough given their lack of bowling resources.
Yeah, Liam Dawson, a lot of people, it's funny, isn't it? When you're out of the team and the team's struggling, people look for other players that could come in and do well. Liam Dawson, he's had such a good record in county cricket in recent years that people's crying out for him to be given an opportunity. He's played 6 one-day internationals over 6 years. His last games were for England in 2022 in one-day international cricket. 5 wickets, economy rate of 6.45. But you feel in India, you feel that you need those quality spin options. And what England have got, they've got Rashid, who actually went around the park yesterday. But they got Liam Livingstone, who's he's not a bad bowler, is he? But you feel he's a bit more of a part-timer. And Jacob Bethel, okay, injured now, probably missed a Champions Trophy. You feel a bit more of a part-timer. Of course, he's at the start of his international career, and he may develop. He actually may, go on in 5, 7 years' time. He may be a really a reliable one-day international bowler, but they haven't got that quality. You look at the quality that India have, and you just know when Jadeja comes on and Akshar Patel come on, they're just going to bottle things up and make it really hard for England. So actually, in a way, English cricket is not set up to do well in India, full stop. Not just in one-day cricket or white ball cricket particularly. I think in more one-day international cricket, but also in Test cricket as well. They're not. Our game is not set up to do well, particularly in India, because A the players are not particularly adept at playing spin, and B, then England don't have the bowlers to bowl spin, really high quality spin, to cause India enough problems quicker than their spinners are able to do it to England. I mean, those pitches they played on they do offer quite a bit. So that last series, England spinners were able to get something out of the pitches, but of course India spinners just better and able to do it quicker.
See, you point out Liam Livingstone there, and to me, he's a fudge, really, because he's not really quite a good enough batsman, and he's not consistent enough with the bat, and his bowling is, occasionally he will come off, but I think his bowling is too predictable. Obviously, he's an incredibly talented cricketer, who can hit the ball miles, we know that, and he can bowl leg spin against right-handers and off spin against left-handers, which is incredible versatility. He's also an excellent fielder. So he's sort of made for T20 and white ball cricket, but he isn't quite good enough in those death overs with the bat. He does come off occasionally and hits enormous sixes, but I think he's still too one-dimensional as a batter. He just tries to hit everything over the leg side, and bowlers just hang it outside off, and he doesn't seem to have an option to hit the ball over the offside. He can play that shot, but he doesn't seem to have the ability to use it very often. And I mean, I obviously we're comparing the great with the average here, but someone like Rohit Sharma can hit the ball in all directions. A brilliant innings he played yesterday. Classic Rohit Sharma 100. His 32nd 100.
He finished yours, wasn't he?
Writing
him off.
I sort of feel in Test cricket he has been struggling a bit, but when he gets on a pitch where the ball is sliding onto the bat, and I think India had the advantage in that second game in Qatar, because I think there was just a little bit of dew and the ball just skated onto the bat a little bit better in that second innings.
England won the toss and batted, though, as they did in the first game as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we can't explain that, but I think there was enough dew there just to help the ball to slide on enough. But Rohit Sharma, he just absolutely, took their attack apart. If they slid it outside off, he hit it over extra magnificently or over cover. If they strayed onto the stumps, he picked them up over a square leg, and if they were short, he pulled them. And he hit a couple of magnificent straight drives. Also, he's got that complete range. And obviously, he's a top-order batsman, so you need that sort of, extra dimension to your play. When you come in at number 6 or 7, like Livingstone does, you perhaps don't need quite the same repertoire. But so Livingston's batting to me just doesn't deliver often enough. And then with the ball, yesterday actually he had good figures, but of course he bowled at a time when really India were just milking the runs, and they'd already won the match, and they were just knocking it around to make sure they didn't have an embarrassing kind of upset at the end. So his figures were a little bit of an illusion, really, as to what he does really provide. And what's the solution? I mean, it certainly feels like they're trying to find that number 7 spot that Jamie Overton looks as if he might be able to operate in, but they do need a number 8 who can bat and bowl spin.
Yeah. Well, Jamie Overton, yeah, they do. You feel in India, you feel you do need a second quality spinner in one day international, and they don't have that at the moment, and it's a problem for them. Jamie Overton at 7 up. He built a beautiful delivery to get rid of Shubman Gill yesterday. A wonderful Yorker. Is he a 7 though? You can see why you can see why they like him, but perhaps in Indian conditions, and he's kind of admitted this himself, hasn't he? That he struggles against spin. So once you say, "Yeah, I need to learn against spin," then what do you face when you come into bat? You face spin inevitably. Actually, I thought a strange shot selection yesterday because okay, the overs were beginning to run out, but it was the last ball of Jadeja's spell, and he tried to take him downtown and just lofted it into the outfield and was caught. I thought actually probably they could have just waited one more ball. Jadeja's such a canny cricketer. Okay, just play him off. He only had one ball left. They tried to hit him for 6 and out he went. And so he kind of used up a few deliveries to get himself in and then get out as soon as Jadeja's finished his spell.
England has still got their batting order wrong. I mean, I would like to see Harry Brook open because again, he hasn't completely overcome the spin issues either. No. Why not have him open? And I did say this before. I mean, Ben Duckett, I know Ben Duckett's made a couple of good scores, but why not have him in the middle order where he can sweep the spinners to distraction? Those Indian spinners are very good. Ravi Jadeja, we know, he's an absolute world class. And Akshar Patel provides something slightly different. There was a good bit of analysis yesterday, actually, on telly, showing how different they are. Jadeja, very close to the stumps when he bowls, so he's bowling absolutely wicket to wicket. Whereas Akshar is much wider on the crease and a more slingy sort of bowler and a bit flatter as well generally, bowled slightly shorter. Of course, Jadeja rushes through his overs. He gets through an over in just over a minute, so he suddenly kind of used up a few dot balls, but almost without realising it. So, just little things like that just help that Indian cause to put the squeeze on a batting order that's not quite sure how to dominate spin, and suddenly a total which can threaten 350 becomes 300 or less.
Yeah. To me, actually, England look to have a good side for other conditions. They don't look to have a good side for Indian conditions. They look to have a good side perhaps for, I don't know, playing in Australia or New Zealand or South Africa.
Maybe Pakistan.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, the pitches are a bit different there, aren't they? They're much flatter, generally speaking. I mean, well, it depends how what they come up with when the tournament gets underway. I mean, the England first match is in Lahore, where they're already using a pitch in Lahore, aren't they, for the New Zealand against Pakistan match. So, I mean, the pitches might get a bit tired as the series goes on. It depends if they have to use a reused pitch for some of the games. But generally, you think the pitches are quite flat in Pakistan, although it depends not so much in the test matches recently where they've kind of doctored them. Look, England do struggle in India, and I came up with that stat. They won 5 matches there since 2002 and lost 26, and even those 5 victories, actually, only 2 of them when the series were live. And even Owen Morgan's team, went to India and lost before the World Cup. And there were some remarkable matches. Actually, there was one in Cuttack, which we were at. Actually, it was about the time we started this podcast, wasn't it? Yeah, I was back in 2017.
I mean, 782 episodes ago.
Is that right? 782 episodes, almost as many runs as India scored that day, actually, in Cuttack. They made 381 for 6. They were 25 for 3. Yuvraj Singh made 150 and Dhoni 134. I mean, that just emphasises their quality. They were 25 for 3. They still got 381. But England, back in those days, were just made of a bit sterner stuff, weren't they? They made 366 for 8 in reply. Owen Morgan made 100. In the first match of that series in Pune, England made 350 for 7, and India won by 3 wickets. Kohli got 100, and Kedar Yadav made 100 as well. And the third one-dayer, England made 321 for 8 in Eden Gardens and won by 5 runs. So they were able to break free a bit more of that Indian spin stranglehold back in those matches. But India's dominance with the bat was able to see them over the line. But I mean, I remember that series. It was a really competitive series, and it made me think England could do well in the World Cup, because what they did is they went to India and challenged them. Okay, they didn't win the series, but at the moment they just look a bit short. Josh Butler saying that we're getting there, we are improving, but I wonder whether they kind of got the right side for doing well in India. Probably not, really. Probably not. And their batters are still struggling to move the score quickly enough against India spinners in those middle overs. I mean, India bowling over half the overs a spin, and that's a challenge for England. I mean, they're not a bad side. They've got lots of good players, lots of talent. But as a team, we haven't quite got the right formula. But then who has away to India?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose what they're trying to do is groom Jacob Bethel as the sort of Jadeja type figure in their
possibly
side, because Jadeja, when he came in originally, I mean, of course, he was a bit of a kind of a shot to nothing for Rajasthan Royals in 2008. He played in that first IPL season for the Royals, and he was a no one, a nobody that Shane Warne identified from a couple of training camps, actually, and picked on him and said, he's got the potential here. And at the time, he was batting at 9 and bowling a couple of overs. And Warne said, I think he can be someone who can take the spinners down. And we'll put him in at number 4 or 5 if spinners on, and he can whack sixes. And I'm going to bowl him, 2 or 3 overs, and he could have an impact. And of course, he's become this absolutely, almost sort of irreplaceable all-rounder in so many ways. He can bat in all sorts of styles. Obviously, his bowling is incredibly reliable, and then he's one of the absolute gun fielders as well. So he's become very integral to all Indian sides. And Bethel, you can see, has the same sort of ability. He looks as if he's quite adaptable cricketer. He played in a very sort of solid way in New Zealand in the Test matches, didn't he? That when he sort of thrust in at number 3, he's got the range of shots for the white ball game. He looks like a possibly good bowler, but with a bit more fine-tuning, and of course a brilliant fielder. So I can see why they're sort of steering him in that direction. Unfortunately, he's now injured, isn't he? And a bit of a doubt for the Champions Trophy, so England have called up Tom Banton.
Yeah, which isn't quite like for like, is it really? A, it's a right-hander. B, he doesn't bowl spin. Perhaps they feel they've got, for Pakistani pitches, they feel they've got the right options elsewhere. You've got Livingston, and you've got probably 5 bowlers with Phil Salt keeping wicket and Joe Root as well. So you have got those 7 bowling options without Jacob Bethel. If Banton does get a game. But it comes back to your point, isn't it, about having left-handers there as well. So that's another left-hander out and another right-hander into the side. Yeah, it looks as if he's going to miss out. Jacob Bethel. He's got a hamstring injury. You know what they're like. Well, we've seen it with Ben Stokes. They're such horrible injuries that you never quite know when you're ready, and you need to probably give it longer rather than the short time. You can't rush them. And I suppose the intensity of the cricket he's been playing over the last 6 months, I don't know, sometimes it can catch up with you, can't it? So it's gone in the hamstring, and he's almost certain to miss the Champions Trophy, which is coming up on the 19th, starting off in Lahore. First game in Lahore on the 19th, and England's first game is against Australia a few days later, also in Lahore. India, of course, get to play their games in the UAE. So actually, I mean, there is an advantage there. So they know what surfaces they're going to play on, whereas the other teams, they have to kind of pick their teams, or they would have to select their teams for Pakistan pitches and for UAE pitches. You could say, well, they're quite similar, but they're not necessarily the same. And also India will get the advantage of having played on all those pitches, whereas the other teams have been playing their matches in Pakistan.
Look, India run the game. You just got to accept it. And
well,
they're running the 100 pretty much as well. So that's what we'll talk about. Some reaction to our podcast last week about the 100 sale after the break. Now, I was invited onto another podcast last week. It's the Unofficial Partner podcast, which is about the business of sport. And it was focusing on the opportunity in India for UK and other nations' sporting brands. It was called, the title of the discussion was The Decade of India, or the Indian Decade. And, regarding India as this amazing hotbed of not just sporting ability, but also commercial opportunity as well. And I think we've seen the impact that India have had, not only on playing performances on various tournaments, but also their commercial power as well, because of for instance, the purchases of these 100 franchises, 4 of which are likely to end up in IPL hands, already have, and the other 4 will have Indian influences, with Indian-born businessmen overseas having a big say in the purchases of these franchises. We did talk about the stats, the figures that would likely end up in county hands last week as well. And we've had some slight adjustments to those figures as a result of learning a little bit more detail about it. The fact is that we said that all counties, non-hosts and hosts, were going to get the same share out of this sale of the 49% of the ECB's franchise holdings. And in fact, the non-host counties, that's 11 of them, are actually going to get a little bit more, and the host counties are going to get a bit less. So it looks like a share out of roughly, say, 25 million to the non-hosts, and more like 17 or 18 to the host counties. The reason being that when there is a subsequent sale of the 51% that the host counties own, they will get more of that. And also, in subsequent broadcast deals from 2028 onwards, the host counties, the host grounds, will get virtually the lot from the new broadcast deal, which is done in 2028. So it does.
That's big news, isn't it? Really, isn't it?
I mean, it's something that the ECB have been trying to sort of steer for a while. Direction of travel is to try and make the counties more sustainable, self-sustainable, and withdraw some of the funding from the centre. And this is part of their business plan. Ultimately, is to enable counties to stand on their own 2 feet. And so, also the other thing is to say that because of the amount of money that the franchise owners, the new owners, are putting into these 800 franchises, they are expecting quite a lot, a lion's share of the new broadcast deal in 2028 to come to them. And that's kind of why they've been able to leverage up the sale sort of amounts as they have, because of that promise in the longer term or mid-term for those franchise owners to get quite a lot of that broadcast money back.
I mean, the cynical part of me there, Yoz, would say that means kind of like long-term slow death for the smaller counties, the non-host counties. It's like saying, well, look, there's lots of money here now. It's up to you to totally reform your business. But if you don't, I'm sorry, there's no way we're going to be able to help you in the future, because we kind of have sold the future of the game to the host counties.
I think there's a reasonable view, actually. I think you're right to think it like that. I think they will still get some money because, for example, the 51%, which is still available from some of the franchises, the money that is sold for will be shared out amongst the other counties as well. The host will get quite a lot, but the rest of the counties will get some of that 51%. And that 51% can escalate in value over time. If you look at, say, the example of the IPL, some of those original franchises, let's say the Rajasthan Royals, were sold for $67 million. So, a 10% share of that would be 6.7. But those shares, the value of that franchise has gone up over time. And because of the broadcast money that has also elevated in value. So now a 10% share in the Rajasthan Royals might be worth, 10, 20 million or more, maybe 50 million. So now a 10% share in the Rajasthan Royals might be worth closer to 100 million. If the valuation of the Royals is now close to $1 billion, which most of the franchises are valued at about that, their 10% share of that is 100 million. So, there is an opportunity for those, that 51% share value to go up over time, and that money, the receipts of that money will be shared out in the game overall.
Yeah, but if that's a one-time sell-off, then again, that's one amount of cash, isn't it, coming in? Whereas the broadcast deals are, every 4 years or whatever they sign. If they're not going to get much of that in the future, then I suppose what the message is clear, isn't it? You better make the most of the money that you're getting now to secure the future of your business and to use the ground, whatever, for all the things that you were suggesting last week to try to make it a year-round business and to be financially viable. But stand on your own 2 feet.
Yeah, but I think there is a lot of opportunity to do that, and obviously, a focus could be, more on the women's game as well to make sure that really properly develops, and there is potential revenue. Actually, I was reading a piece today written by Elizabeth Ammon, Legside Lizzie, on the Times about the Warwickshire women's setup and how they're, really looking into finding specific sponsors for women's cricket, who won't necessarily support men's cricket, but they will support women's cricket. And actually, I'm thinking back to, again, the IPL and some times when you've seen female brands on male shirts, during the IPL. So having women's cricket as a much greater focus will actually offer a lot more revenue to counties in the future. So it's not all doom and gloom, but yes, your fundamental point is right. I think that the message from the centre is you've got to now, we're going to give you this windfall, but you've got to use it wisely because you need to build a sustainable future for yourselves. And that's really, that's a fact with every business, isn't it? You have to build a sustainable future. And our counties will argue, well, we're providing in the future players for England. And, if you didn't have us as a county, those players wouldn't come through. Well, that's a reasonable argument. But that pathway that they develop should, produce, a collaboration of interest in the community, and all that will help to push more revenue towards individual counties. So, if they spread the word about their excellence, each county should be a centre of excellence, and within that they will draw more people in and hopefully more sponsors in, and becomes a more sustainable business.
Well, that goes back to what you were talking about last week, potentially ways for counties to grow their business. Because there is one other factor here, Yoz, which we haven't talked about yet, which is, and it's happened in the IPL, first there were 8 and now there are more. So, there are now 800 teams, but what about the possibility of 2 more? I'm thinking of the West Country, which is, there is no franchise in the West Country, for example. Is there a possibility of a couple more 100 teams to come online?
Well, there is, of course, and that has been mooted. Durham are also interested, as in probably 2 or 3 other counties as well. I think that there'll be a conflict here because, in a way, to widen it, to make it a bigger competition, should, encourage more counties to sort of be part of it. At the same time, the owners of those franchises won't necessarily want more teams because it means a dilution of their revenue from future broadcasting rights, because it will have to be divided by 10 instead of 8. So there was a lot of argument when the IPL was expanded from 8 to 10 teams. There was quite a lot of dissent from owners, but obviously it happened in the end, and actually it raised a massive amount of revenue because the 2 new teams sold for $650 and $950 million. So actually it was a result. It's made the tournament longer as a result, and maybe a bit more cumbersome. Actually, that leads us on to a nice letter that we got, an email we got the other day. I think this was actually as a result of...
It's lovely to think you might have had a letter, yours, but actually it was an email, was it?
I do get occasional letters, do you? Mostly from banks saying, why haven't you paid your mortgage off yet?
Oh, yeah. Letters only from banks or whatever, those sorts of institutions.
This is from Andrew Lakeman, who says, I love your podcast, and this episode is really good about how to spend the money from the franchises. He says, I'm a Brit living in Sydney and have a few thoughts to share that relate to the pod and the article which I wrote to support it on Substack, on the Crickverse, he says Big Bash has really been part of the summer, he says Big Bash has really become part of the summer, and after drifting a bit, it's bounced back strongly over the last 2 seasons. A shorter competition and more star players has helped. The Thunder and Sixes, caps and shirts are ubiquitous. In Sydney, the 100 can be the same. The UK paywall of cricket has been a disaster, and all Australian home games are on free-to-air TV. Sky Foxtel offering is premium with Ultra HD and better graphics, etc. The result of the BBL and Test cricket on TV means that cricket gets young kids into the sport, something that links back to Simon's point about using grounds better. In Australia, and forgetting about the weather, there are nets everywhere, plus Astro pitches. You will see these nets used all the time, and not just for official training, just a few lads or girls having a hit. I can't think where the nearest nets would be to my parents in North Yorkshire. That's from Andrew Lakeman.
Yeah, well, what's one thing we said about the Big Bash, wasn't it? Actually, that less is more. I mean, it just got a bit ridiculous, really. They'd expanded the competition. It was successful to start with. They expanded it and had more matches, and then people stopped going because it was just, oh, there's another game, home game today. I'll go to next week's game, and then you get to next week. Oh, well, there'll be another one on Thursday. I'll go to that instead. And then you think, oh, well, there'll be another one next week. But actually, if you've got, if there are only a limited number of fixtures, then you've really got to get involved and support your team over that time. And that's actually one point you made about the 100 at the moment, that it is quite quite a short, sharp tournament, isn't it? It lasts for, 3 weeks or so. They get it done. But then, having said that, the IPL has expanded as the crowds turn up and people seem to love it, and it's 2 months long, and they're talking about it. And ultimately, you do feel with the IPL, they would love to have like a Premier League situation where you have a 9-month season and you're playing every weekend or things like that. Don't you think? Have a situation like that? And not necessarily 9 months, but so it's on the whole time throughout the season. And people don't get bored over here, generally speaking, during a Premier League season, do they? Don't say, this has been going on for too long. People sort of lap it up. Oh, it's Saturday or it's Sunday, whatever. Who are we playing this weekend? And then you've got all these other competitions in the midweek as well. So you're playing 2 games a week often, and people are pretty engaged with it, aren't they? And I sense that's where they'd like to go ultimately with the IPL. I don't know whether you're talking 5 years down the line, but in 80 or 100 years' time, an IPL that has all those sort of, if you like, English football.
I suppose
and through competitions.
I suppose the trouble with India really is it's such a big country. You forget, don't you, how big. And whereas England, I mean, you can travel. I know Plymouth beat Liverpool in the FA Cup yesterday, and that was a long old journey for players and supporters. But that's just about the maximum distance you can go, isn't it? Whereas in India, you can go from Dharamshala. I mean, it takes forever to get there, right down to Chennai or Coimbatore in Kerala or somewhere like that. I mean, it's a long distance. It's a long old haul to get to those places, and it would be harder, I think, to have a game every week with 20 teams or something, just because of the scale of the country. Really, what they do have is they've got domestic leagues going well in those states now. Each of the main states in India has their own quite successful T20 leagues, and with sponsors and full TV coverage, and they cover it in different languages as well. So there's a sort of dialect commentary. So you're actually talking about what one of the reasons why India is now so good in white ball cricket, especially, is because there's so much of it going on at a very high standard, and it's almost like sort of 7 or 8 individual little countries that have come together to produce this fantastic Indian one-day side.
Yeah, you feel they should be so good, for the investment and for the fanaticism, interest in the games. I suppose one of the things that used to happen in India, you got a sense of this, was that it was focused on just the main areas. So how big was your talent pool? But now it seems as if the talent pool is just spread far and wide, and if you are a good player from wherever, you will gradually, well, not definitely, but there's a greater chance that you will rise to the top. And we've highlighted the story of Yashaji Jaiswal, haven't we? How he's come through, whereas he probably wouldn't have come through 30, 40 years ago, but he has today.
Do you know his brother's now playing Ranji Trophy as well? Apparently his brother, who's older, sort of parked his cricket aspirations to allow his younger brother, Yashasbi, to progress and, realise his dreams. And his brother has now come back into the game and is now playing in the Ranji Trophy himself. He hasn't done very well, apparently, but he sort of decided, actually, that he might as well have a go. Seeing the success of his younger brother, he might as well have a go as well. Yeah, and it's just drawn in so many. I mean, Ryan Parag, who plays for the Rajasthan Royals, comes from sort of Guwahati, miles away.
East.
Right up in the northeast corner of India, close to the Himalayas. And then you've got, actually in the same side, playing with the Rajasthan Royals, you've got Sanju Samson, who comes from Kerala. And I don't know what the distance between them is, but it would be probably over 1,000 miles, maybe 1,500 miles between those two states or, towns where they come from. So, it is a vast hinterland, and it's now, I think, close to 1.5 billion population as well. 600 million smartphones in India now. So it's quite a good market for commercial activity.
Well, sounds of England, no point turning up for the next one-day international. I think they're so strong. Jaiswal didn't even get in, did he, in the last match? He didn't play. He played in the first game, didn't play in the second match. So England got one more game to go before they head off to the Champions Trophy. Yeah, that distance between Guwahati and Kerala is about the same distance as there's between the two teams, it feels at the moment. I mean, yeah, England are good. They got some talent, plenty of talent, but India just a bit better. But there are some things that England could do to try to improve, I think, but not necessarily in the short term.
Oh, true. Well, anyway, we'll be back at the end of this one-day series. Final matches on Wednesday in Ahmedabad. So we'll review England's overall performances and look ahead of the Champions Trophy later in the week. And just another reminder about our sister site, the Analyst Plus, at patreon.com/theanalyst25, and the interview with Liam Dawson, which you can be part of tomorrow night if you join the Analyst Plus. And we'll be back later in the week.